So it's Sunday, first Sunday after Easter. It's the only really important time of the year for not only ritual but also for motivation and becoming active as a member of the Christian church, because it all started off this way with Easter was the one day of the year when trainees for the church, they took it very seriously, of course, because they had to. For 100 years after Jesus, I think John, who we're going to mention in a minute, John who wrote the Gospel according to John, allegedly also wrote the book of Revelation, known amongst Catholics as the Apocalypse, the last things. He allegedly was locked up on an island called Patmos. He was locked up for his subversive activities, and that's where he wrote his things. He also had plenty of time to think, like Nelson Mandela did when he was locked up. So today we're going to use a text from Johnny about what appears to be Jesus back from the dead and appearing to his disciples to reinforce their importance in the scheme of things. And it's because in the first, I don't know, might have been the first 400 years of Catholicism, before they had a formal strategic alliance with the Roman Empire, before that, they were under the hammer, and they were a ghetto type religion. So getting new members was mainly done through family contacts and acquaintances. It wasn't open to the public, so to speak. It was fairly selective, and their rituals were, when I say clandestine, I don't mean that they were like spooky, but they may well have appeared to be spooky to the Romans and to other people who weren't disciples of Jesus, because a lot of it was carried out in behind closed doors. And even as this reading says, because they're behind closed doors, the first disciples, because they felt under pressure since Jesus, the leader, had been arrested, tried and executed and buried. They felt as though they were under threat. That they might be next, and some of them were pretty well next. Johnny, who writes this, however, wasn't next. He might have been on the list, but he managed to evade, according to the story, he managed to evade arrest to live to an old age, to a ripe old age. So I mean, ritual was always part of ghetto groups. The Jews developed their rituals, which bound them together. I mean, for, what is it, 2 plus 2, 4,000 years. It's the glue that holds them together. Ritual and moralising, trying to work out what exactly are we able to do, what have we not got to do. But that's the moralising. The ritual is what they come together. We must come together. Friday night until sunset on Saturday, the Jews come together, see? Because we must preserve this togetherness. And the Christians, because the first Christians obviously were Jewish people, who did they desert the synagogues, or did they in fact have dual allegiance, one to the synagogue and the other to the Christian bunch of Jewish converts? So they do too, until they were ostracised, I presume, by one of the groups. Make up your mind, what are you? Are you a disciple of Jesus, or are you a follower of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob? And the rabbis and the priests and the temple, make up your mind, you can't do both. So when they started to find themselves cut off from the other religious wellspring of their being. They got caught, of course, like meat in a sandwich, because the wider society, secular societies, or pagan as we call them, societies, sometimes were happy with them and sometimes very unhappy with them. Eventually they ended up having to hide, and this is where I suppose, you know, we get the idea of a ghetto. For their own safety, for their own security, they had to hide, and the ritual became essential, the lifeblood of the underground bunch of disciples of Jesus, with the leaders travelling around, I suppose, Palestine to Greece, to Crete, to Rome, travel, and identifiable only by that small group. So Easter was always the big day of the year, because Easter was the day when they celebrated the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. However, every Sunday they used to get together and celebrate the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. That's what the bread and wine's all about, and the readings. Now, what about new membership? Well, new membership was primarily from your family members and from your friends and acquaintances, maybe some neighbours, maybe, but it was pretty controlled, because you couldn't afford to have somebody, a plant, on the inside who would betray you in times of when you were unpopular as a group. So the scrutiny, I suppose some of that is washed off on Roman Catholicism over 2,000 years, that we're pretty, suspicious about outsiders. They mean us harm, you know, which has been expressed by some observers during these royal commissions and parliamentary inquiries into the sexual abuse of children by clergy. They've noticed that, in fact, some of the bishops and some of the spokespersons for the Catholic Church have, in fact, said, well, we're a bit suspicious of why people are investigating us, as though we're the only ones in the whole world who suffer from this ghastly immoral behaviour. So that suspicion lurk, and certainly up to the time when Johnny was writing, certainly first 100 years, and then maybe for most of the next 200-300 years, until Constantine, the Roman Emperor, said, hey, listen, I need help. Would you mind coming and helping us with the bureaucracy of the Roman Empire? So just speak from Johnny, which is probably, I can't tell you what year, but if Jesus was dead and buried in the 30s, well then this is, 10, 20, 30, 40 years later. Johnny's trying to make sure that the gist, the nub of what happened after Jesus rose from the dead and disappeared, what we call the Ascension. So the first Sunday after Easter was the day when new recruits were received into full communion, as they would say, with the underground Catholic community, and they had their own ritual. It was a bit posh, considering that they were underground, but naturally you'd have to have one a year or something, surely, that would put a bit of colour in the cheeks. If you've been living in the dark, for the rest of the year, you'd like to shed a bit of light and show a bit of elan, enthusiasm, at least once a year, for the sake of your members. And that's what they did. They said, listen, you people have been under scrutiny for 2 years to see whether you really are fair dinkum, you want to be a disciple of Jesus, or do you just want to come for the ride, or you want to treat it as being a hobby or something, or maybe even you're a spy. So up to about 2 years later, scrutiny on the Easter Sunday itself, you would be received into full communion with the Catholic community, and you would be given, and a bishop would have come, the overseer would have come and done it on behalf of the community, and then dressed you up in a white robe, so that I don't know whether you wore it when you went out, because in fact you might end up in that way with having a target on your back. But certainly, as far as the rest of the community is concerned, you were a special person now. You weren't a neophyte or a beginner anymore. You were in. You see what I mean? And you were the lifeblood of the Christian communities. It was new blood from all kinds of social groups, both genders, socioeconomic, different groups. You were the lifeblood. So you made the church really Catholic, that is, open to all. On goes the white thing, and then the week after, which is the Sunday we're talking about, off came the white thing, and that was the end of your 7 days of being known amongst your own group as being a fully paid up member of the Catholic community. So they used this gospel, I think, on that Sunday. This is as close as I can get because I'm not in a parish anymore, therefore I haven't got access to my books. I could put my hand on the book and say this is the first Sunday of Easter and this is the reading, but I've tried to work this out, and it's Johnny chapter 20, verse 1931. It's one of the appearances of Jesus. They're all locked up in the room, they're frightened of the police because they thought they're next. If they've got the leader, what are they going to do to us? So they've locked themselves in, and all of a sudden, bing, Jesus appears. It's interesting, these things, they call them do they call them apparitions? Appearances of Jesus. Now, who is it? Is it the Jesus who was dead and buried? Or is he a ghost? What is he? So these reports of apparitions tend to, and including Johnny's, tend to go on about, look, put your fingers in the holes in my hand and put your fingers in the holes in my feet if you want to, because we've got to try to work out for your sake, he would be saying, am I a ghost? Which means I've got no relationship really with earthly life. Whatever the Jews thought about ghosts, I'm not sure. Because I know in the Asian cultures there's a great respect for the dead. And you might even expect the dead to have some influence on your earthly life. And that's why you wanted to have friendly ghosts and not unfriendly ghosts, and therefore you have rituals of keeping the ghosts on side, putting money there and feeding, put food out and all that kind of stuff. Now, I really don't know what the Jews thought of ghosts, but this emphasis in Johnny is for things like, especially for Tom. Tom didn't believe. He said no. When they reported the first apparition of Jesus, he said he wasn't there, and he said, I don't know, I don't believe it until I stick my fingers in the holes in his hands and all that. I want proof. And that's not unreasonable. A lot of people would like more than the clerics, in fact, dish out. Just to read this thing is not enough. Just to read the thing and say, there you are, it's in the textbook. No, not enough. So you've got to give some kind of... Now, the ultimate proof, of course, is, I can believe what you say because I see what you do. Because I think the old song used to say, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. So Christians and Catholics meeting around the world on the first Sunday after Easter together with the readings and the bread and the wine, please go out and be of some earthly use, not only to your family and friends but to the community in which you live. And that would be a proof of the resurrection of Jesus. How? I'm not interested now. What I'm saying is that is the proof. That's the resurrection. And I think after a while, very quickly, in fact, after Easter weekend, we then, I think, have a day called Ascension Thursday. I think it's Ascension Sunday now. When you've got to get used to the idea there is no Jesus somewhere in the world, in a cave or something. There is the next we will have after the ascension of Jesus. He's gone, he's gone. He says, listen, don't panic. I'm going, but I'm sending somebody else. Pentecost will come and say, guess what, folks? The Spirit of Jesus is here with us and is unlimited in time and space, and has an interest in every man, woman and child on the face of the earth. So that's a package which Christians will need to get their teeth into. Easter, Ascension and the descent of the Spirit of Pentecost. And that big, bite-sized but chunky dose of spirituality/religion is meant to get you through the rest of the year until we start all over again in December with the start of the program, repeated, called Advent. Anyway, that's enough. That's enough. So thanks for being with us today, and with the grace of God, we'll be back next Sunday.